What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another great episode of the Tight Lines Podcast. In this week's episode, we are going to be doing another piece of lure reviewing here, and we're going to be reviewing a bass fishing Hall of Fame lure. While there's no such thing, this would be a lure that's in the Hall of Fame of bass fishing. This lure is in everybody's tackle box, so without wasting any time, let's get into it and let's review the original Z-Man Chatterbait.
Welcome to the Tight Lines Podcast, your destination for anything fishing. Now here's your host, Tyler Plackey.
Alrighty, so the Chatterbait, the famous introduction to the bladed jig. Originally produced by Z-Man, there are many names and many companies that build the bladed jig, but none more recognizable than the original Z-Man Chatterbait. Since its inception, it has grown and been redesigned, now having 18 different variations. That's right, I went on and counted them, including obviously the original. You have the jackhammer, the baby jack, the big blade, the stealth blade, the mini max, the micro max, the cross eyes, the tungsten, the Evo. When you start counting all of them up, guys, it's crazy. They basically made any type of chatterbait you can think of, and then a couple more, and of course, they'll come out with a new iteration of the chatterbait next year. But today we're going to just talk about the Z-Man Chatterbait, and I want you to remember that when we talk about this review. This is solely the original Z-Man Chatterbait, not any of the iterations, none of the knockoff brands, if you want to call them that. Just the Z-Man Chatterbait. First thing we'll do is we'll do a bit of a history lesson. We'll discuss what this bait is. We'll talk pricing, we'll talk colors, sizes, techniques for fishing it, gear to throw it on, positives, negatives, and my final thoughts if you should put this in your tackle box. So let's get into it. We're going to start off with our history lesson here today. Thought this would be fun. So let's go ahead and check it out. So I actually went on and utilized AI here. Thought it'd be fun to try out some AI and see what they could put together for me on a history lesson on the Chatterbait. Wanted to try and see how AI can be used for this, so we'll see. So here is a 3-paragraph history of the Chatterbait. The Z-Man Chatterbait is a bladed jig that carved out a whole new category of lure. This is very true. It was originally conceived in the late 90s by lure designer Ron Davis in South Carolina. He was trying to add intense vibration and erratic action to a traditional jig, inspired in part by older vibrating lures like the Walker Special. By 1998, he had engineered a unique hex-shaped blade attached directly to a weighted jig head, creating a small lure that thumped and vibrated aggressively when retrieved. Early production under Davis's small rad lures label was limited, but the design struck a chord with local anglers and slowly gained traction. The Chatterbait truly exploded in popularity in 2006 when pro angler Brian Thrift, which if you guys look at, he's the guy whose name is on the jackhammer, when he used it to win a major FLW tournament down on Okeechobee. Catching large bass had likely never seen that style of lure before. As word spread to the bass fishing community, demand rapidly outpaced Davis' small-scale production capabilities. Sensing the potential, Z-Man Fishing Products, then a supplier of silicone skirts and components to lure makers, stepped in to manufacture and distribute the lures nationwide. By 2008, Z-Man had acquired the Chatterbait patents and trademarks from Davis, solidifying its role as the home of the original Chatterbait and expanding the line into multiple models. Under Z-Man's stewardship, the Chatterbait evolved into a staple lure on professional circuits and in everyday anglers' tackle boxes. Variants like the jackhammer, developed in collaboration with Japan's Evergreen International, have helped anglers win Bassmaster Classics, Red Crest Championships, and countless other local tournaments. What began as a novel way to make a jig wiggle became a legendary fishing tool known for its distinctive vibration, sound, and ability to trigger strikes in a wide range of conditions. So, what did we learn from there? We learned one, it was created by a guy out of South Carolina, Ron Davis. There was a need for it. He built it. Some guy in his garage just bootstrapped a brand new lure. Big company figured out about it, bought it out from him, and here we are today with a ton of them. So now let's learn more about the Chatterbait from Z-Man themselves. This comes directly from the Z-Man website. Born in a garage in South Carolina and a staple in the tournament since Brian Thrift since Brian Thrift's record-breaking performance in Okeechobee, the OG bladed jig is still the favorite of serious bass anglers and weekend warriors alike, thanks to its patented head-to-blade connection, upgraded componentry, dizzying array of colors, and eminently affordable price point. Time and again, top anglers rely on the original Chatterbait brand bladed swim jig to help fill live wells and cash tournament checks. This groundbreaking lure's patented direct head-to-blade connection and trademarked head-shaped chatter blade combine to produce unmatched vibration, flash, action, and a distinctive appearance that enabled it to perform like a crankbait, jig, and spinnerbait all in one fish slaying package. Upgraded features include a super strong quick clip that won't come undone, molded in trailer keeper, patented solid hub quick change easy skirting, and a sticky sharp 5/0 needle point hook. Available in a huge assortment of head, blade, and skirt color combinations to suit virtually every scenario a hardcore bass angler will encounter. So that is the description of the Chatterbait from Z-Man themselves. Basically a bladed jig, and the big key points from them are easy to change skirts, nice big sharp hook, and then obviously a bunch of different colors. But the big thing about the Chatterbait that makes it so different than any other bladed jig, unless they pay for the patent, the ability to use their patent, is that it is directly connecting the blade on the jig head to the jig head. There's no, snap in between or swivel in between or anything funny like you see in some of these other ones. It is directly attached, and that is the big thing that Z-Man has done so well. So we're going to now move on to our pricing. The Z-Man Chatterbait currently sells for $6.49 online at Z-Man's website. However, they can be found in the $5 to $7 range depending on where you shop. Used to be in the $4.99 range. Now it's kind of $5.49 to $5.99 is pretty typical of what you're going to find out and about. That's again just for the original Chatterbait. Some places have them marked up a little bit more, but typically in the 5 to 7 range. But on the lower end of that 5 to 7 range is where you will find your Chatterbaits priced. All right, moving on to colors. So Z-Man boasts a whopping 62 colors for the original Chatterbait. 62 colors. That sounds like a Zoom baits trickworm kind of thing. Like we've talked about Zoom in the when we did the fluke episode a couple weeks ago, about a month ago that was, and we reviewed it. They have a ton of colors. Z-Man, same deal, tons of colors. I'm not going to list every one of them off because we'd be here for 6 hours, but we are going to at least talk about some of my favorites. And when I say some, I have about 8 or 10 here listed. So obviously the first one, all white with the silver blade. That is a great shad presentation. White fluke tail on the back, great stuff. Up next, chartreuse and white, just like a spinnerbait. Gotta love chartreuse and white. Moving on, black and blue, really good for stained water. Firecraw, Texas red, both of those are really, really good for in the springtime. I love reds in the spring. Going back to Junebug, black and red, and green pumpkin black, similar to the black and blue. Those three are all really, really good for stained water and even for some clear water. The colors are simple and honestly, and to the point without being flashy. You don't want them to be super flashy and out there. The one thing that you have to note here is there are multiple colored blades. So Z-Man has started changing blade colors. You can find silver blades, you can find gold blades, you can find black blades, you can find clear blades, but primarily you find silver and gold blades. And the colors have different purposes. So gold blades are typically better for dirty water and for matching a bluegill, bream, or perch pattern. So if that's the primary forage in your lake, in your river, in your creek, whatever it is that you're fishing, if it's bluegill, if it's bream, or it's perch, we're going to be throwing a gold blade. Silver is more flashy and designed for clear water to match shad, herring, and shiners for bait fish. So again, if that's what your primary bait fish is shad, herring, or shiners, you're going to throw a silver blade. I primarily throw silver blades just because they're a little bit easier to find, it seems like. I have dabbled a bit into the gold blade market, and I'm working into that more, mostly because my ponds are primarily bluegill. I've kind of got a couple that are color matched. I've got a couple like, the Firecraw ones typically have an orange blade on them. And then I think there's like an all black one that's a black blade. So stuff like that sometimes shows up too. And then there's some that have like clear blades. So there are different options, but mostly silver and gold. Moving on to our sizes, the Z-Man Chatterbait does come in 3 different sizes. Super simple, 1/4 ounce, 3/8 ounce, and ½ ounce. All right, we are now going to move on to techniques. Now, there are many different ways that anglers will fish a chatterbait, tons of techniques out there, but there's primarily three that I use, so that's the ones we're going to talk about today. The first technique is simple. It is a straight retrieve. You just chuck and wind. You can change speeds. You can change your rod tip height to get, up and down the water column. But it is a chuck and wind. Super simple, just how you'd fish a spinnerbait. Super easy. Again, a couple different ways that you can move it around in the water column. I like it about halfway down the water column in my local ponds. You don't need it sitting right up on, the surface. You don't need it rubbing on the bottom. It's right down the middle, just super simple. Don't overthink it. Real easy. The next technique is very similar to a straight retrieve, but it has something called rips mixed into it. So how this goes is you cast it out, you're retrieving the lure in, and when you feel some sort of resistance, what would be grass, that's when you use your rod tip and you sweep and rip the lure out of the grass. This ripping is especially important as the chatterbait is coming out of the grass. It's going to explode back out into the open, and that's when an opportunistic bass is going to bite. These bass aren't going to be sitting in the grass looking to eat something in the grass. They're going to be hanging out on that grass line. Remember, these bass are smart. They know how to hunt. They're finding cover where they're not seen, and they're going to get something when it's not expecting it. So, again, how we're ripping it, it's almost like that big, long, dragging hook set, but it's one big, hard rip. You're going to sweep your rod tip, left to right or right to left, whichever way it needs to be, and just rip that chatterbait straight out of the grass. The third and final method that I'll use is jigging it. Rip it up and then let it kind of flutter back down and then rip it back up. You'll hear that, that blade, and you'll feel that blade fire up as you rip it up and let it flutter back down. And that will also get attention. And then we're going to talk about the different trailers we use in a moment, because it is very much dependent on local forage, what color you're running, but mostly, honestly, the technique that you're using. So trailers are essential in the world of the chatterbait. Chatterbaits are just like every other jig. And they aren't meant to be fished naked. A lot of times when I throw a spinnerbait, I don't throw a trailer on a spinnerbait. I just throw the spinnerbait, and it seems to work very well. In the chatterbaits, in the world of chatterbaits, just like jigs, you gotta have something on the back. While the script provides fluff, the blade some flash and vibration, the trailer is really what provides that thought of a meal to the fish. My trailers will always match the color of the chatterbait as best as possible. So I'm not going to throw, let's say an all black chatterbait with a chartreuse trailer, right? If I've got a black chatterbait, it's going to be a black trailer. If I have a red chatterbait, a red trailer. I like it all to match in color. I use a variety of trailers, but my main two trailers are flukes and craws. I don't use a paddle tail very much because honestly, I think flukes work better, and you don't really need the big kicking motion on a paddle tail that you get, they use when you just swim it. I think if fluke gets enough vibration, I think it works really well. Flukes are very successful in a swimming retrieve and bait fish presentations. So again, like the straight retrieve and then the ripping technique that we were just talking about. Some examples of different flukes that I'll use are like Zoom Super Flukes, Creme Flukes, Spunk Shads, Freeloaders. Again, that Spunk Shads from Missile Baits and Hog Farmer, the Rapala Freeloader, the Creme brand fluke, and then obviously the Zoom Super Fluke are all great flukes, just depending on your budget and what you're kind of looking for. The Spunk Shad's a little bit fatter, the Freeloader's a little bit thinner, just kind of depends what you're going there. Usually keep my fluke between 3 to 5 inches in length. Don't want it to be too small or too long. Obviously too small and it just kind of looks off, especially the big 5/0 hook. And too long of a trailer on the back is going to get short struck and you're going to lose tails. And you're just going to be replacing baits all the time. For craws, literally anything that flaps. Big ones for me is like the Strike King Rage Craw, Crash Craws from Berkeley, the Chigger Craw, and then the BFE Creature Bait from Big Bite Baits. And I'll swim those as well. But I will also keep those lower in the water column, and then I'll also use that when I do like the jigging technique. So those are my big trailers. Again, we're matching the color of the trailer to the color of the chatterbait. Moving on to gear, I throw my chatterbait on 2 different rods, just depending on what I have with me. The first one is my standard 7-3 all-around combo. That's the Dobbins Maverick 734C with the Corrado 7.2 to 1. 150 size MGL reel, and a 20-pound Power Pro braid. You guys have heard me talk about this a bajillion times. It is the same rod reel that I throw everything else on. Super simple. I tie a 2 to 3 foot leader with 12-pound fluorocarbon with a double uni knot. And then I use a trilene knot or a polymer knot to tie to my bait. Just kind of depends when I'm feeling that day. One, I don't really prefer one over the other. Personally, I think the Charlie knot's a bit easier to tie, but it's up to you guys. Sorry, I just bumped my mic. The second combo I'll use is my 7-foot Daiwa Airdex medium heavy fast rod with a 7.2 to 1 Eva Garcia max per reel. Spool with 17-pound mono. Both work very well. It just depends what I bring with me. Honestly, I really don't prefer one combo over the other. I'll use them interchangeably. If I'm going to be in a bit tighter space, I don't need to chuck it as far. I'll use the Daiwa. If I can kind of, let one loose and let one rip, I'll bring the Maverick 734C. Just a bit longer lets me chuck it. But overall, what we're looking for, in my opinion, is going to be 7-foot to 7'3" medium heavy fast bait casting rod. Or if you're in Dobbins, get a heavy fast, because we all know how Dobbins runs. We've talked about that before. And then a bait casting reel with a 7 to 1 gear ratio. So it might be a 7.1 to 1, a 7.5 to 1, but somewhere in that 7 to 1 family of ratio. And then some, whatever reel you like, whatever hand you like. And then 15 to 20 pounds of whatever line you put on it. Personally, I like braid. Just no reason not to run braid, especially if you're going to run a leader on it. I like a good sturdy hook set. Obviously they talk about pulling the bait out of the fish's mouth. If you're good at fishing, I don't think there's a big issue of pulling the bait. I've never pulled the bait out of the fish's mouth. Every time I've set the hook well. I like a bit heavier line because, again, big 5/0 hook. Also, you're running it through grass. You're going to be able to rip it out of that grass and get a good, tough hook set. That 7-foot to 7 to 7'3" rod gives you plenty of casting distance. Medium heavy gives you enough backbone. And obviously, I'm not big into the moderate rods or the glass rods. Glass rods get expensive, in all honesty. Moderate rods, I like a little bit firmer tip, honestly. Talking in the action of it. So I like more of a fast rod than a moderately fast rod or a moderate rod. Haven't tried out the glass rod yet, so I need to check out the glass rod at some point, but I've just, with the price they come and, me being a bank guy, I don't want to bring 8 different rods with me. I want rods that can do a little bit of everything. So honestly, I just stick with my graphite rod. And the 7 to 1 reel is just fast enough to really pull the bait, but slow enough to kind of slow roll it as well. Again, you don't need anything super crazy here. We're not going off the wall. Very simple combo that I literally throw everything else on as well. So moving on to our positives and negatives. We'll start with the negatives first because there's just 2 of them, and then we'll move on to the positives. Negatives, the first one is it doesn't always start up right. If you've ever fished a chatterbait, you know what I mean? Every once in a while, you cast it out, you start to reel, and you don't feel that vibration. And all you have to do is give it a rip, and it fires right up. But it's kind of annoying that sometimes it doesn't fire right up perfectly. It's just part of it being a bait. It just happens. Negative number 2 is it's been getting thrown so much recently, and it's so big and it's so popular that I almost wonder if fish are getting used to it and it's not as effective as it once was. I've noticed that if I'm finding ponds that get fished a lot and real heavily, the chatterbait doesn't seem to have that pick them apart ability that they used to. Obviously, chatterbaits used to be the one that you could show up at a pond that everyone fishes spinnerbaits with and you could outcatch anybody. Now, you got to show up with a new bait, if that's a Ned rig, if it's a drop shot, whatever it might be. I don't think the chatterbait's quite, and hear me out on this. I'm not saying it's an ineffective bait. I think it's a great bait. All I'm saying is I think it may not be as effective, right? So if we're on a 0 to 100 scale, with 0 being completely ineffective and 1 being the greatest bait of all time, it might used to have been a 99 or a 100. It's probably like a 90 now, okay? I'm not saying it's a 5. I'm not saying it's a 30. It's still really effective. I think it's just starting to lose that grip a little bit just because it's getting so heavily fished. Moving on to our positives, the first one, very versatile lure, okay? You can throw this anywhere, anytime, any condition, because there's so many color options, there's so many ways to fish it, there's, the different techniques, different trailers you can put on it, and like I said, throw it anywhere. The blade almost acts like a weed guard, so you're not going to get hung up on stuff very often. It's just all around a really good bait to throw. Number 2, it's at a really good price point, especially compared to other bladed jigs. Even though it is getting a little more expensive, when you start comparing it to other bladed jigs, it's very well priced. You look at the Berkeley Slobber Knocker, you look at the Picasso Shock Blade, the Guggenbait's Clickbait, or even like the Strike King Thunder Cricket. Those are all starting at 10 or 11 bucks for, something that's competing with the Chatterbait, right? It's not competing with the Jackhammer. It's not competing with the Tungsten Evo. It's just a bladed jig. Number three is good quality components. I've yet to have a Chatterbait fail on me. I don't have an issue with the skirt falling down. I don't have an issue with hooks, going dull, blades bending, anything real funny, components falling apart. Not even any issues with rust. I actually had a Chatterbait that I lost and found like 2 weeks later. Threw out in the pond, line snapped on me, and like 2 weeks later, I hooked it back with a different bait and pulled it in. And there's a little bit of rust on the silver, on the blade, but really nothing bad. Number four, our fourth and second to last positive here is a consistent action right from the package. When you look at a lot of baits, a lot of people talk about tuning baits, crankbaits and glide baits, and all these other things. People are tuning them a certain way. I don't feel the need to tune or adjust the bait. I pull it out of the package, put a trailer on it, tie it to my line, and I throw it, and it's going to fish the way it's supposed to. And number five is it fishes really well through grass and much better than a spinnerbait. Oftentimes, people, when they're trying to choose between a chatterbait and another bait, it's a chatterbait and a spinnerbait. And the biggest issue with spinnerbait is the huge wire on it, all the extra components for the swivels, the blades, everything that's special about a spinnerbait. But that kind of stuff catches on grass, on weeds, and it's very frustrating. The chatterbait, you get stuck in a little bit of grass, give it a big hard rip, and all of a sudden it's back out and it's good as new. So let's move on now to my final thoughts as we end this episode. So honestly, the Z-Man Chatterbait is an excellent bait for any angler. Beginners, pros, anywhere in the middle. It is a very versatile bait and can be fished in really any water conditions. I've fished it in cloudy weather, clear weather, cold, warm, windy, calm, deep, shallow, whatever you can think of, right? I've fished it everywhere. I've used different trailers. I've used a variety of colors, and honestly, you can mimic almost any bait for a bass. It's super super versatile because guys, it's pretty much just a jig, which is about as versatile of a lure as you can get. It's just got a cool blade on it. The chatterbait is a bait that's won millions and millions and millions of dollars in professional tournaments. And honestly, in the last 30 years, is probably the most innovative lure created. When we think about different baits, everyone's always trying to change something slightly. You take a crankbait and you flatten it out a little bit. You've got flat-sided crankbaits. And then you add a circuit board lip and it does a little something different. Everyone's always changing something just a little bit. The bladed jig, when it came out, back in the 90s, and when Z-Man bought it up and really brought out in the late 2000s, was mind-boggling. It was brand new. No one had ever seen it before. Like I said, at the time, companies are copying other baits. This thing really said, oh my God, here I am. For the price, $5 to $7, this is one of the best, if not the best baits you can add to your tackle arsenal. And I would 100%, not 99, not 98, not 99.5, 100% recommend checking out the Chatterbait. All right, everybody, that is this week's episode for you all. Really fun review to do for you guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. And if you have, please be sure to drop us a positive review on whatever podcast platform you tune in with. It really does help the show. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Amazon. So if you're listening to this, you're on one of those sites. Congratulations. Also, please be sure to drop us a follow and check out my Instagram, my YouTube, and my TikTok. All of them are Tyler Plackey Fishing. Super easy to find. They all have the exact same logo as each other. Really not difficult thing to find. Really simple. If you go on there, you can see what I've been up to. DM me suggestions for the show, ask questions for the tackle box, or just chat with me about fishing or anything else. Love to talk to you guys on there. Also, if you go to my Instagram, ton of stuff gets put on there before anything else. That's kind of where I update stuff first. If you really want to know what's going on, go ahead and follow the Instagram. Thank you guys so much for listening every week and supporting the show. I really do appreciate it. Obviously, your guys' support means the world to me, and that's the whole reason the show is continuing to go on. If we were getting 2 reviews a week, I don't think we'd be doing anything with the show. But getting the views, getting the subscriptions, the follows does mean a ton to me. And again, we're keeping the show free, so definitely don't worry about that. So I really do appreciate all your support. So thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, tight lines, y'all.